Detoxification is something I talk about a lot on this podcast. If you guys have been listening to me for a while, you know this. I talk about how we are living in this toxic soup, everything from the foods that we're eating, the air that we breathe, the products that are in our houses, the products that we're putting on our body. It's everywhere and we cannot escape it. And it is so important for our health to detox these toxins from our body, for our hormones, for our weight. But there's one kind of toxin that I don't talk about often enough that I feel has more of an impact probably than any of these other toxins that we talk about. And that's emotional toxins. When we don't deal with or process our emotions through life, they can become trapped in our body and make us ill and even in pain. Emotional detoxification is something I am personally very familiar with, more so than I'd like to be. I've had a lot of emotional detoxification throughout my healing journey, and we're going to talk about a little bit about that today. But my guest today is an expert on all things detox. Dr. Wendy Myers is a naturopathic doctor and founder of MyersDetox.com. She's a heavy metal detox and bioenergetics expert, as well as the #1 best-selling author of Limitless Energy, How to Detox Metals to End Exhaustion and Chronic Fatigue. Wendy is the host of a top 100 rated podcast, the Myers Detox podcast, about protecting your health with not only physical detoxification, but emotional detoxification. So welcome, Wendy, for a second time. Wendy's been on the podcast before. I'm going to link to our first chat in the show notes. So welcome, Wendy.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You look beautiful as always.
Thank
yes.
you.
Wendy's living the life down in Mexico.
All that emotional detox really,
Yes.
really lifts the weight off of you,
Creates youthfulness, doesn't it?
Yes.
I think it does. Truly, I do think it does 100%. So before we jump into this very, deep topic, because it is, I mean, there's so much, people have a very hard time even just talking about their emotions and, trapped trauma that's still going on in their life. But why is this an important piece for you? Because you spent many years really talking about the detoxification of toxins in our environment, and as did I, but there's this emotional detox. So do you have a personal story of how that helped you to heal?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm like a lot of people, a lot of health enthusiasts listening to this podcast. I was, pretty much my health was my full-time job for a long time. And, eating a perfect diet and everything organic and going to the farmer's market and making my own food and, taking a huge bag full of supplements and, doing the stress reduction, the yoga and exercising, most days but still struggling with sleep, but just, really focusing on my health. And I just mentally, I was just like gray, where I just felt I was very physically healthy, but I would wake up and just feel meh,
Yes, I do.
But I had a really good life. I felt like I had a decent childhood growing up. I didn't have abuse. My parents loved me. I felt like I had even got to the point where I was doing the work I'm doing now. And I felt like I'm finally doing what I love and I'm passionate about, but like, what's the problem? Like, why am I not happy? Why don't I feel good? And so it's something that, and just in the course of discovery and, learning about bioenergetics, I found this bioenergetic program called NES Health, NES Health. And that is a program that you do a scan and identifies all of your emotional traumas and emotions that you're having, because these all have a frequency which can be measured. And so you do this, galvanic skin response scan or test. And I started working on my trauma doing this program, and I was really taken aback by it and how much better I felt starting to slowly release my emotional trauma and identifying it every time I did a scan. And I also kind of, slowly but surely put it together that a lot of my clients that were also doing everything physically correct doing different protocols, detoxing, taking supplements, doing the diet, doing everything. I mean, perfect. And they're miserable,
Mhm.
and so there's much more to it than just, doing physical protocols and diet and supplements and things like that, because the research shows that emotional trauma is responsible for 65% of physical health issues.
I
And
would think
that's
it's
the,
even higher.
yeah, it definitely could be. And, there's that mind body connection where, people cannot separate their mind from their physical health, their emotional trauma from their physical health. So if anyone, and especially people suffering from complex chronic illness, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, those are like the issues that are, definitely in a big way caused by emotional trauma.
Mhm. I think that like, because I did body work, I did a type of very deep tissue body work for 17 years. And in all that time and all the research that I've done, and I've talked to a lot of people about this before and done my own healing, I really believe that with every chronic illness there is an emotional piece to it. It could
Yeah.
be 100% driven by those emotions, or there could just be an aspect of the emotional that needs to be healed in order to completely get better. And so I think when a lot of these people are finding that they're doing all those things, they're doing the supplements, the diet, they're exercising, but they're still not able to get rid of that chronic health problem fully, it's because they haven't dealt with the emotional piece of it. Would you not agree?
Absolutely, 100%. And the research supports this,
Mm.
totally. And I found that as I started doing the emotional detox work, I found that I sleep better. I don't have blood sugar control issues that I used to have. I don't have the weight issues that I used to have. I lose weight a lot easier, because I'm not under this chronic state of stress, and I think a lot of people don't realize they're kind of like the lobster being boiled in the water. They don't real, or the frog or whatever. Like they don't realize how stressed they are because they've been in that state since childhood, or they
Mhm.
they develop this high stress set point. And I'll talk about what emotional trauma is and what it
Yeah.
looks like. But when you're in an environment that's abusive, or even just neglect, where you had everything done for you, you were clothed and fed and taken to the soccer games and everything, but your parents just didn't tune into you emotionally, didn't ask you how you felt, or they just didn't care, or what have you. You can just have this neglect that affects you. It can affect you as much as if you were abused.
Yes.
It can show up in people being very dissociated from their emotions, being numb from their emotions, and things of that nature. And then all of the addictions and all the things that go along with that, you know, a constant pleasure seeking, eating food, binge eating, and, eating disorders and things of that nature will go hand in hand with childhood development issues, including emotional neglect.
Oh my gosh, yes. I remember personally I don't talk about it enough on this podcast. And I often tell my story of when I was just suddenly rapidly gaining all this weight and my hormones were a mess and I had to figure all this out. But a really big part of that time for me was finally looking at my shit, because I had a lot going on and I kept attracting the same scenarios. And we're going to talk about this later on about the law of attraction stuff. But I kept attracting the same scenario happening over and over with men in my life that would come into my life, and these relationships would never work out. And it was just like, and I would blame the person, of course, like, oh, they're just an ass, or they're, whatever I blame it all on the man, I was never looking at myself. And I always thought that I had it figured out because I could recognize, looking into my past, what had gone wrong. I could see that, oh, my parents weren't the best of parents, and I had some neglect and I had trauma. And so I thought, because I could see that that happened, that was me dealing with it,
Yeah.
rather than going, oh, maybe I actually need to go get help. And it was kind of like the final straw or whatever that broke, that got me to go, I can't keep repeating this pattern over and over again. and I have to go heal what happened in my past. So I had to go and find, ways of dealing with this. And I spent years detoxing a lot of trapped emotions in my body that were very difficult to look at. And I had been raped before, and that was a huge, I had suppressed that. But because I thought, I know that I was raped, and I know that that's a bad thing, and I know that that's probably why I'm screwed up, I still hadn't dealt with it. And I had just cut myself off energetically from the waist down. I was like, there was dead down there for many years. And it wasn't until I started to really deal with that the weight started coming off, like, yes, I had to do the other side of things, the supplements, the diet, the hormones, but the emotional side was just as important at that time for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, and I think there's a lot of people also, including myself, that feel like they've dealt with their past,
Yep.
that have read all the books or have taken classes or have, I had 10 years of talk therapy. I mean, I was in it to win it. Okay.
Yes, same.
I was like, ooh, I'm going to win the championship for
working on
those
yourself.
And I mean, that was like $100,000 for
Yes.
that, it was a lot of money, $150 a pop for 10 years. But it was off and on throughout my lifetime. And just for the record, I'm not crazy. I just really like self-improvement.
Yes, same.
But the problem is that talk therapy, and this is quoting one of the number one emotional trauma researchers, Professor Bessel van der Kolk. He wrote The Body Keeps the Score.
Oh, yeah.
And he said that yapping doesn't work to address emotional trauma.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's so cute. And the reason is because, our emotions and our emotional traumas, they are a frequency. So they're not in our brain cells. They're not anywhere physically in our brain. There's no research anywhere that has found memories or emotions anywhere in our brain. They live in the energy field around our body. And so we have this biofield that's about 10 feet in diameter, 3 meters in diameter around our body. And so these emotional traumas and emotions, negative stuck emotions, if you will, are in this field, and you can't talk them away. And another reason you can't talk them away is because many of these traumas happen to us, anything that we weren't emotionally ready to deal with before we could even speak. And they become like a core part of our personality. So you can't talk yourself out of your personality and your coping mechanisms as a result of trauma that you experienced. And you also, and you also have to be consciously aware of a trauma or an emotion to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of the stuff that we are dealing with is unconscious. Like for me, I didn't realize how much self-hatred that I was carrying, and so I reached a point where I was really focusing on self-hatred and releasing it. Because a colleague of mine who's an expert in emotional trauma was saying, everyone has there's 5 core emotions that you need to work on releasing. So it's worthlessness, powerlessness, self-hatred, self-deprivation, and survival fear. Everybody has that, but I bet a lot of you guys listening are not identifying with having those type of emotions. But a lot of people they're dissociated, disconnected from their emotions, or they're just not aware of them. So for me, I was working on self-hatred, and I didn't think I had self-hatred. I was like, I have this great job. I live in Mexico. I live in this amazing home, near the beach, and I finally have money now, and I'm doing everything I wanted to do. I've met all my goals. But I was with a narcissist. I was in a relationship with a narcissist, and you have to hate yourself if you're in a relationship with a narcissist. That's the only way that can work,
Yeah.
And so, so I started working on it. We went to the beach one day, and I was putting on my bathing suit, looking in the mirror, and I was overweight because I was miserable. And I just looked in the mirror, and I had this wave of self-hatred come over me. And I was planning to leave this person. So I was like, on this date, I am leaving this person. I'm leaving this house. I'm going to go to LA for a month. And he's just, he's got to go. And so I had my little plan. And so because I had this wave of self-hatred come over me, I was I felt like I can't leave him. He loves me. He accepts me in my body. I have to stay with this person, and I was very clingy with him the rest of the day. And then what I realized, because of the trauma work that I was doing, I just had this intensification of this emotion as it was releasing. And that's what happens to do trauma work. I'll talk about the protocols in a minute, but you'll have when you release a negative emotion, it will come up and intensify, and you really feel it. It's not very comfortable, but then it's gone. Like the next day, I was like, "What was that?" But then I realized that's what was keeping me with this person. That's why, because I was so clingy when I was like, wanted to leave him, and so for me, that was a really valuable lesson. I didn't realize how much self-hatred I had, or that it made me choose this partner and stay with this person when they treated me like crap, and I
Yes.
knew I deserved something better, but I still stayed with them for 3.5 years,
Yep.
and it's that powerlessness, that worthlessness, that self-hatred, self-deprivation, survival fear.
Oh my
I was
God.
staying for all those reasons, and I was staying overweight for similar reasons,
Yeah.
and so when you do this type of very important work, not only for yourself physically and emotionally, you lose a lot of baggage. You can lose the weight. You release all these negative stuck emotions, and then the higher frequency emotions like love and joy and peace are no longer being repressed, and they can come to the surface, and you can start feeling those positive emotions again that have maybe eluded you. Because I think there's like, why are you listening to this podcast? It's not because you love losing weight, it's because people don't listen to my podcast because they just love doing infrared saunas and detoxing. Then taking pills to detox. You want to feel love, joy, and peace.
Yes.
That's why you're doing all of this stuff. And so the easy, fast route to that is releasing your emotional baggage so that you can get to that. And so it's, of course, it's more complex than that, but that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So going back to what you were first saying about the bioenergetic field, because I think a lot of people will go, what are you guys talking about? What is that? That's
What?
woo-woo. Don't even
Yeah.
include me in this conversation.
Yeah.
Is this, are you talking like chakras too, when you're talking about the bioenergetic field?
You're talking about what?
Chakras?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Chakras are part of the energy field. The meridians are part of the energy field. But there's just this big wave of our heart sends out an energy field about 3 meters in diameter. Our brain sends out energy waves. I mean, what's the delta and theta and beta waves?
Right.
Those are energy waves.
And these are all things that can be measured.
That can be measured. The EKG, that's measuring your heart waves. That's what that's doing. And there's a lot of conventional medical research done by Dr. Carlos Ventura on emotional trauma and using sound therapy to release the emotional trauma. And so this is conventional medical research done by a cardiologist. This is not, woo-woo stuff. But Heart Math Institute has shown we do have this energy field around our body. There's decades of research around this. This is not woo-woo. And all our emotional traumas and negative emotions, those can also be measured by doing it, because they all have a specific frequency which can be measured. Just like Wi-Fi internet, or your cordless cell phone, your cordless home phone is at 2.4 megahertz. That's a frequency, and information travels on that frequency. Sound and information, data over the internet, that's information traveling on waves. So it's the same concept. We have emotions and traumas that are stored in energy waves in our energy field around our body. That's where they are. So that's where they have to be addressed. That's why talk therapy doesn't work. Yeah. You have to use frequencies using sound therapy to release these traumas out of your energy field, and you erase them from your timeline. It's like the trauma never even happened, because the energy, the frequency is no longer in your energy field affecting you mentally or physically.
Yes. And I did the talk therapy, and for a couple of years like you did, and I did get stuff from it, but I did not get what you're talking about. Like, it was great to have somebody just listen to me, and, a third eye kind of coming in and going, this is maybe a different way you could look at certain situations that happened in your life. But I remember just starting to feel more and more like there was something missing, like I wasn't healing, that I wasn't letting go of what was inside of me. And it was not till I started doing this emotional energy work did all of this start to really change. And I remember the one lady explained it to me, is you're getting it down to a cellular level. You're letting go of this trapped emotion that's inside your body. And she said, if we don't deal with emotions throughout our lifetime, which we don't deal with all of the emotions, she's like, chemically, what's happening on the inside, like you have this big emotion that happens, you're supposed to have all this chemical release, you're supposed to express it, whatever that emotion is, and then you carry on. But if you don't express it, it gets that chemicals and the stuff that's happening on the inside is trapped. And so, and this can be measured. It's not woo-woo, this is scientific. And a lot of this, and more and more science is starting to prove how we can hold on to this, and even generational trauma. Isn't that right? Can you talk about
Yes.
generational trauma?
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of the stuff you're carrying may not even be your own stuff, because intergenerationally, and I talk about this, frequently, is that, there's research that shows that people that were Holocaust survivors, that their offspring have more anxiety, have more issues going on. And it's because this trauma that anyone experiences has an energy, and that can be passed on to the energy field of your child as well. And so when you're doing this type of work, you're able to release that stuff that you're not even aware that you're carrying. Again, it's a more unconscious baggage that you don't even know that you're dealing with. It's causing your anxiety or physical health issues.
Can you tell me more about how that test works? I've never heard of that before, the bioenergetic test that you did originally. Like, is that something you offer? Where can somebody go to do that?
Yes, yeah. So I do offer this test. It's called a Ness Health bioenergetic scan, and you can find it on my site on myersdetox.com. And it's like a program that's for your mental and physical health, and it's amazing. It's something I've done for about 6, 7 years. And there's a number of protocols that you can use to address the issues found in the scan. I definitely recommend people try it at least once, just to kind of get an idea. It's very, very powerful. And there's 45 years of research behind it.
Wow.
But there's other protocols I recommend as well, for addressing emotional trauma.
Yeah.
And because, like before, like I said, the bioenergetic therapy, the bioenergetic scan, there's protocols you do that send information. They put information into your energy field to clear the emotional traumas. Like, you get new information that helps you to clear the frequencies of that emotional trauma and negative emotions. But another way that you can do that is with biofield tuning.
Okay.
So you can get
Because the
this.
other one, Wendy, do you have to go see a practitioner, obviously, for
No,
this?
no,
The testing?
you do work with a practitioner, but you can do the scan at home.
You
So you can
can.
be you can
Okay.
be anywhere in the world and do the scan at home. But
Okay.
you do need a practitioner to go over like the first scan with you, because you're going to be like, what is this? You're not going to know how to read it or
So
what
it's not
any
a
of it means.
machine. Is this like, how does the scan work?
Yeah, so the scan, it's actually a voice scan.
Oh,
So you
okay.
just it's very simple. You don't need any equipment. You can do a galvanic skin response scan, which we do offer that if you want to do a scan for pets or for babies or whatever, or anyone that can't talk. So we do have scanners. It looks kind of like a mouse, like it looks kind of like this,
Okay.
that's sent to your home. But if you make it easy on yourself, you can do a voice scan, because it picks up all the frequencies in your body they're in your voice. And so those are the way that you do that scan.
Wow, I've got to do this. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. It's phenomenal. And then the
Yeah.
other way is the biofield tuning. And so
Mm.
this is a biofield tuning fork right here. This is called the sonic slider. And Eileen McCusick is a pioneer in this biofield tuning. She's got tons of courses and books and forks and things that she's well versed in how to detect emotional traumas in the energy field using the forks and then releasing it. So it's super, super easy to do. And I talk about this. I have a free masterclass. It's called the Emotional Detox Masterclass. And I talk about emotional trauma, that the research, the health issues it causes shown in the research. And I touch on sound therapy as well.
Okay.
So it's so worth your time to
Yeah.
watch this masterclass. You can check it out at emo-detox.com, emo-detox.com. So when you're doing the sound therapy, so this main one that I recommend, it doesn't have any sound that comes out of it. It's just a frequency that's released, but you basically just hit it on something and then you put the tuning fork on your heart and it vibrates to the edge of your energy field and releases, slowly but surely, whatever emotions that you intend to release. And so, but it, just so for the listeners, there's a different tuning fork here. So you can hear that sound. And just listening to that sound is sending a frequency to your body that's healing you.
And what do you start to like as far, because I know when I've let go of emotional trauma without the talk therapy, there was many times where I would feel physically ill for a few days. So talk about detoxification, like literally I was having a physical detox from an emotional detox. So
Yes.
did you find that as well?
Yeah, for sure. So, I have a program called the Emotional Detox Program. We have a whole section on dealing with detox symptoms. And so you can have emotional detox symptoms where the best thing to do is just get into water.
Yeah.
Because a bath, salt water, the ocean, whatever, emotions will release into the water. So it helps them dissipate really quickly. That's why a lot of us are kind of drawn to a bath after a stressful day,
Yeah.
And so as far as like other detox symptoms, doing biofield tuning fork therapy is a major heavy metal detox as well.
What?
Yes, it definitely releases toxins for sure. And when you are just dealing with certain emotions, certain emotions like anger can affect the liver, and you can have, once you're releasing a certain emotion, you can, like, say you're releasing anger, you could have some toxins released from the liver that make you not feel well, that your body has to process, but I mean, that's a simplification, but yeah, you can definitely have physical symptoms. You can have fatigue, you can have trouble sleeping, because doing this work can be hard on the nervous system.
Yeah.
It can be kind of stressful on the nervous system, but it's easier than dealing with, an addiction or being overweight, or it's easier than what you're dealing with, the same old crap that you're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
So I don't want to scare anyone off about, oh, you're going to have detox symptoms or, sleepless nights or what have you, but it passes. That's the thing.
I
It's
think
going to
that attracts
wave.
people to it because
Yeah.
most people want to have some sort of verification that it's working.
Oh yeah, there's no question it's working, using
Yeah.
the sound therapy and other modalities. Like when I started doing Nest Health, within the first 30 days of doing it, I started having really vivid dreams, which I never had, very intense dreams. And it was, you're processing stuff, getting rid of traumas and processing stuff in your sleep,
Right.
which
Yeah.
I found really fascinating. And a lot of, I don't know, it was just really, really interesting. And I've heard that reported, I mean, so many times. We've had 5,000 scans done,
Wow.
at Meyer Detox. We've had a lot of people, thousands of people go through and do scans. And many of them have the same kind of report, the same, thing with that, they're having intense
The
dreams.
symptoms. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when I would have this release, the lady that I was doing this with, she would say, go home and have a lot of showers. And so, and she was just, and I was like, why, but it would get rid of, like you said, like water is so good for cleansing of that energy. And I would be super foggy brain. I'd be absolutely exhausted. There was times where I would have to like pull my car over after coming from her place because I was so wiped because of what had come out of me. And none of it was talk therapy. I mean, we talk about what was happening, but it was all energetic stuff. And so with your program, what I love is that you're putting the power back in our hands, in the sense of we don't need to go and travel to see the the shaman, like the energy healers or the talk therapist, or you're saying we can do this on our own, which I think is super
Yes.
powerful.
And that's key, because a lot of people, they can't afford, the talk therapy is
Yeah.
great. I mean, you become like an expert in your own neuroses, and that's awesome.
Yes.
You figure exactly what's wrong with you, and what's wrong with you. But a lot of people can't afford that, and they can't afford to go and do work with practitioners on an ongoing basis. But with the protocols I recommend in my emotional detox program, it's mainly the biofield tuning fork therapy. I do recommend the Nest Health as well. That's a great adjunct. It's not necessary, but this is an $85 purchase, and that's it. But we talk about it's more importantly, you have to know what emotions to work on, and there's a lot to it. There's a lot to learning about emotional trauma, and that's why it's a pretty extensive course. There's a module on bioenergetics, a module on psychology and mindset, and a module on physical health as well, because we need to work energetically releasing the emotions. You have to work psychologically on your mindset and learn about emotional trauma, learn about emotional neglect, learn about your personality type and how you're coping with trauma and how to transmute that. There's a
Right.
lot. And then no conversation about trauma could be complete without working on your physical health, because if you are having you have a lot of emotional trauma and you do everything in the bioenergetic and psychology module, you can still have a lot of negative emotions and stress if your blood sugar is out of control, or if you're not eating the right diet for you, if you're eating a standard American diet, if you are not getting enough sunlight, or there's just a lot of different you have to take care of your physical body as well. That has to be stabilized for you to have stable emotions and
Mhm.
for you to have emotional mastery.
And to understand, like, to be in touch with your own body. You
Yeah.
have to be healthy, or else you're very out of touch with it. You don't know what's going on, or you can't tune in when you're unhealthy and eating the wrong foods and toxic. And you do have to really work on that physical health in order to be in tune with your system, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what about when it comes to what we attract in our life? So we've talked about, how undealt with emotions can cause pain or physical illness, like chronic illness. But what is it doing with the law of attraction, or what you're attracting in your life? And how I had said, like in the beginning, what made me go and do this was that I just kept attracting the same crap over and over and over in my life. These men that would use me and abuse me. And it was like, why I'm a good person? Why am I attracting this into my life? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, a lot of times the people and patterns that we attract into our life are based on our primary caregiver relationships. And you're going to continue repeating that cycle until you learn the lesson. You'll keep repeating the same patterns and meeting the same type of people, same crap, different story, until you kind of do this inner work. Because, a lot of people, we want love and we want to be in an amazing relationship. We want to be in the job of our dreams. But if you are dealing with a lot of powerlessness and worthlessness and survival fear, or, the self-hatred or any of the other emotions that you have that we deal with, you're probably not going to pick the right partner that's
Mhm.
best for you. You're not going to, you're going to stay in a job where your boss treats you like crap because you don't feel like you deserve better, and so when you can release these kind of lower frequency emotions and experience more high frequency emotions, where you're kind of elevating your general emotional set point. You're not always going to be happy all the time, but if you can generally raise your emotional set point, you're going to attract other people and other things into your life that are at your new level. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? And so it's really, really important to do this type of work, to be able to step into your life purpose, to be
Yes.
able to step into an alignment with what you deserve in life. And you just have to kind of release this old stuff to get to that.
I was the client that I had just before with this conversation is a great example. She is 52. She's stunning. I mean, she's, she doesn't have any weight to lose. She thinks she does, but she really doesn't. She looks absolutely amazing for 52. She's got a rockin' bod on her. And she said, I just want to attract, I want a man to think I'm attractive. And I said, most men would say you're very attractive. And she's like, no, but I'm not young the way I used to be. I want them to think I'm hot. And I'm like, look, if you think that you're not attractive, you are going to attract the man that's going to be the dick, that's going to be like, I want you to look like you're 25, even though you're 52. I said, that's all you're going to attract unless you figure this out for yourself and start loving where you're at right now and know your value. You look amazing. Most men would find it very attractive, but yeah. So just that, she's got to have that switch in her brain or she's going to keep attracting that into her life.
Yeah. And that's what this work is all about, is developing self-love. Because, so many of us, we want to love ourselves, or we like a lot of different aspects of ourselves. Like I certainly felt like I like a lot of aspects about myself, but I still hated myself.
Yeah, I was the same way, Wendy.
On
Exactly.
some level. So, and it's not as easy just like, oh, look in the mirror and say, I love you. That doesn't work. Like, I'm sorry, but yeah, there's, these movies, The Law of Attraction, and, just do your vision board and just think positive thoughts. That
Doesn't work.
You can't think your way. That's the problem. You can't intellectualize and think your way out of emotions and traumas, and you have to address them where they're at, is on this energetic level. And it's surprisingly easy to do. It's surprisingly simple to do. It just takes time. It's like anything. It's like a practice where I recommend in my program to do about, 30 minutes to an hour a day of biofield tuning fork therapy. And just day by day by day, you're releasing more and more and more garbage and stuff. And you feel better and better and better.
And there's no end to it either, I don't think, because life continues on. We're always going to have stuff coming at us. And I never, ever look at my past healing and think I'm done. I'm like, oh, I've dealt with a lot. I mean, I saw energy healers for 8 years. It was like life transforming. I totally got rid of so much garbage out of my life, but I still got it, ladies. I still have a lot of crap to deal with. Like, I don't know if it ever ends.
Yeah. And there's adjuncts you can do to, like, there's different things you can do. There's different ways you can approach trauma. But in my emotional detox program, I talk about some of the most effective ways that I found to address trauma. And I also talk about, toning the vagus nerve. A lot of people have emotional trauma that affects their gut, that affects their vagus nerve, that innervates all of their body's organs. So that's why emotional trauma causes physical health issues, because you need to have really high vagus nerve tone in order to be healthy, in order to have resiliency to stress. And so I talk about vagus nerve toning and how to do that. And that's also another very simple thing to do as well. But that's super important to kind of, because a lot of people just are so stressed out and they have this really high stress set point. They just can't calm down. Like once they get stressed, they have a really hard time calming down. So they'll reach for food, they'll reach for a cigarette, they'll reach for alcohol, and they just don't know what's driving this compulsion, why they can't stop, because like if people go to AA, like my dad was like the king of Overeaters Anonymous. You know what I mean? He was like the head guy in Houston, Texas for a while. But it's like, just stopping the behavior, the overeating or the binging and the bulimia or whatever the deal is, the underlying root impetus or root cause of that behavior is still there. It's the trauma. You can't just stop the behavior. You can't just, you have to do that inner work, and doing the protocols in the emotional detox program that help to get at that root, to nip it in the bud and release it.
Yeah. It's like telling the woman that's drinking her bottle of wine every night to just stop drinking. And it works for a week and then they're right back at it because they never dealt with the emotion, why they're drinking in the first place. Why are they trying to numb? What are they numbing from? And then same with, we constantly, women go to look for the next best diet. And they just keep doing this on and off the dieting wagon for 20, 30 years. And they just keep looking to the diet as being the answer. And it's like, no, you have to stop dieting, go upstream and go to the root of the problem, which is it's emotional.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that, once you kind of do this trauma work, like for me, I'm on the seafood diet. I seafood, I eat it because I don't have this like broken record, this stress, kind of this energy draining, broken record, negative self-talk and stuff going on in the background anymore. And it's such a relief. So I just don't have this stress that's contributing to weight issues any longer. So I'm able to kind of eat more of what I like, where I couldn't just like a few years ago. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
sugar lights up your brain like cocaine does. It makes you feel good. And so when you're not dealing with your emotions, you're going to turn to sugar like you turn to booze or any other drug.
Yeah. And also on that same note is when you do emotional trauma work, a lot of people have reported to me, they don't even have to try to quit drinking or quit cigarettes. They just
Yep.
don't want it anymore.
100%.
They
Yep.
just don't, they're not reaching for it anymore because that underlying root cause that trauma releases, and they don't need to self-soothe anymore. They don't need that thing anymore.
No, and that to me, that sounds so much easier than following the next best diet.
Yes, it
I'd rather be
does.
on the
I
seafood
don't.
diet with you, Wendy.
Yeah, like when I was like, I've done all the diets too, and it's like, I can't have like, why can't I just have beans when I'm on the paleo diet, or or I was vegan for a minute. I'm like a hot moment. I had a vegan moment. I'm like, why can't I just have honey? Like, what's the big freaking deal? It's such a joyless diet.
Yeah, exactly. Do you talk at all in your program about using psychedelics?
You know what? I don't. I
No,
don't at all. I mean, I'm in Mexico. There's a lot of people
there is.
they're
Yeah.
doing combo, and they're doing the frog medicine, and they're doing
The
the
frog medicine.
ayahuasca. The combo is frog. It's from poison arrow frogs.
Oh, I
So
have
all
not
my
heard of this
friends,
one.
there's like all kinds of medicine men down here doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But yeah, it's not, for me, I think that those things are perfectly fine to do.
It's a
And I think,
tool for the toolbox.
yeah, it's something that for some people, definitely can open up their consciousness, open up their intuition, and help them release some stuff, for sure.
But I think it
For
has to
me,
call to the person, hey?
yeah, it's not for me. I just feel like I have more effective methods of doing that. And, I did psychedelics in high school.
Yeah, same.
I've done it. I don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah, no thanks. I've had some bad
I
trips.
tried it a few times. I was like, cool, awesome. But now I'm just not in that mode. But there's a lot of people here that are doing that, and it's a regular spiritual cleansing for them. And so it works for some people. And I think there's nothing wrong with that.
No, I have a friend that's about to do a Huichol ceremony with peyote. The guy from Mexico has come up to Canada, and they do these Huichol ceremonies, and you do peyote for a day. And she's like,
Oh,
do you want to do it? And I'm like,
can I have his number? My boyfriend wants to try peyote. No, I'm joking.
I tried it when I lived in Mexico. I went to a peyote ceremony with a Huichol Indian, and it was really interesting because he actually like soloed me out a few times, and like he took me to this cliffside, and we had to do this big ritual where we gave like chocolate to the gods, and he gave me some peyote, not enough to get super high, thank goodness, but it was still a very interesting experience. And they find like it's a religion for them. It's very important part of their lifestyle and their religion, and it helps their people to get rid of trapped emotions. And we had to have an egg and put all of our emotional garbage kind of intentionally inside the egg, and then you put it in the fire. But it's just another thing. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
Why
Oh,
not?
yeah. Yeah, another reason, like on a spiritual note, of kind of why I'm doing what I do is talking about emotional trauma and talking about, heavy metal and chemical detox, is because, part of like connecting to your creator is getting rid of these toxins that have low frequency. And so when people have a lot of heavy metals and chemicals and they have emotional trauma, just they're so mired in their physical and mental symptoms. They just don't have the mental space or energy for this higher level spiritual connection to their creator. Or if they have toxins that are, calcifying their pineal gland, which is really important to connect to your creator, to connect to your intuition, to connect to mass consciousness. These toxins really prevent people from being able to really develop their spirituality and develop their relationship with God or source or your creator or whatever you want to call it. And so it's important to do this work to develop that spiritual side of yourself, which is a very important side of yourself to develop to be your happiest, healthiest, whole person.
Mhm.
And so that's another reason that I do the work that I'm doing as well.
Do you see very often where people, when if they've been trying to chelate heavy metals for a long time, and then they deal with the emotional detox, that then suddenly you'll see like a down, less heavy metals in the body from doing the emotional detox?
Yeah, they both go
Yeah,
hand in
I
hand
would
because
think so.
when you release toxins, they can have different emotions tied to them.
Mm.
Like with aluminum, people have a lot of anxiety and, different metals, they can have depression. So, and the same thing when you're doing emotional detox, the biofield tuning fork therapy is actually a very effective heavy metal detox as well. So it just, they kind of go hand in hand.
When I started doing my heavy metal chelation, I would get a really, really sore throat. And I think that heavy metals is what caused my thyroid issue, my conversion issue. And mercury, I know you taught me this in the very beginning, really attracts to the thyroid. And my first like big heavy metal detoxes, my throat would kill me. I'd have to put castor oil packs on it. And I remember thinking, this is an emotional detox. The thyroid is all the things that you wanted to say and you never did when it's trapped, right? So the thyroid can get affected if you didn't speak your mind. It's your voice chakra. And so if I had mercury in there, detoxing the mercury was detoxing the thyroid,
Yeah.
so it was detoxing that emotional side of myself, I think, for
Yeah,
sure.
I definitely have had that when I was doing emotional release work. I had like a week where I lost my voice and I had to
Yeah.
cancel all my podcasts and stuff. And it was really strange for sure.
Mm. So tell us then about, so everybody can get started on the free webinar masterclass, which is what's it called? Emotional detox
Yeah, it's the emotional detox masterclass and
masterclass.
well worth your time
Mhm.
at emo-detox.com.
Okay, I'm going to link to that in the show notes, everybody. So I think that that's if this piques your interest and you think, this is maybe something I want to explore more, I think that's a really great place to start, is with the free webinar, and see if it connects with you, for sure. And see if you're ready for it, ready for that next step in your detoxification journey. I want to thank you, Wendy, for coming back on the show. And I look forward to having you on for a third time at some point. So
Yes,
thank you
thanks for
very
having
much.
me. Thanks for having me. And you can learn more about me at myersdetox.com. And I'm on all the social media at myersdetox.com and YouTube at youtube.com/Wendy Myers.
And she's got a great podcast. It's one of my favorite podcasts. So I'm going to link to all of that in the show notes so you guys can go find Wendy if you haven't already found her.